Okay. Now j is not equal to 0, so this is probably not going to work. Hey, looks like it did. So there we go. So this code might actually just be redundant, but you know, whatever. So in our final df, so just to demonstrate this, currently, what is j? J is equal to 1. If I make j is equal to 2, and I run all of this code, to copy all of that, enter, enter, no column to pass from file. Okay, so it didn't. You'll see now later, we have to do some error trapping, but let's just try run it again. Where does this fail? Okay, I don't want to get lost in debugging this because we're going to do a whole... Let's just make j is equal to 7. And I know that 7 is Apple. So let's just run this whole thing again. So what have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? Yeah, so you'll see later where oh, this is a good time to do the error trapping then. So we've written the code that brings stuff back, but now we need to do the error trapping. Before I do that, now stick with me with this. We want to turn this whole block of code into its own little function, because I'm gonna be using this code again and again and again and again. So rather than me copying this whole thing out, I'm gonna give it a name and refer to it. So to create it as a function, I'm gonna Control C, and we're gonna just put the functions over here. Now the way you create a function, it's just function to collect data, is a thing called the def, D-E-F. And we're calling this function imaginatively get data. Brackets, and then we call this ticker fin_df. Now, these are the variables that we're going to feed the function. Ticker, so what the stock name is, and then the data container to store the data in. Stick with me, you'll see this all works. We need to set up the function so that these are the two variables that need to be fed to it for the rest of the code to work. So we're going to keep ticker out of the loop, or sort of out of the function. And then the rest of it goes into the function. And we have our very own function. So how this works is we have the final big data frame, or at the end of the function, sorry, it needs to return a value. And this findf is what we're going to return. That's the point of the whole thing. So return findf. So that's what's being returned by the function. Stick with me. Now inside this loop, we then say fin df is equal to get data ticker fin df. Okay. Now we want to put on some error trapping. So we want to say try indentation, and then if it doesn't work, except for now we're going to just say pass, which basically means do nothing. So now let's just test this out for the first 10 rows. So get rid of that. I'm going to go from 0 to 10. And so let's run this thing, see what happens. Okay, it's run. So let's just print findf. So only three of the 10 actually worked. Now we're gonna get to this and solving all of this. But this just demonstrates that this code's run a few times and it's brought back the data. Let's just do that again just to demonstrate. It might give you a different answer. Print J. So let's run it. 0. Okay, done. Because this time only 2 of them worked. Anyway, so now we need to solve this problem of sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So to do that, we're going to set this up so that it tries each one 10 times. If it works, it's going to stop trying, but if it doesn't, it'll try, another 9 times. So we're going to put a loop around this. Get rid of that. Around this block of code. So I just push tab over there, selected it all and push tab. And want to go for k, which is the new variable, in range 0, 10, colon, and this is try 10 times. Okay, wanted to try this, and then if it works, so if this is successful, break, exits loop. Cool. Now, just so that we know where we are, where's this variable? Each time we want to know how many attempts it's had. So we're gonna create a variable called attempt, and we call it 0. And each time this thing loops through, it's gonna reset that to 0. Okay, and then we're going to call this attempt plus equals 1. So this is the way in Python you go plus equals is the same as going as attempt is equal to attempt plus 1. So that's going to take this 0 and increment and say, yes, we've tried it once, break to get out of this because it worked. But then if it doesn't work, what we're going to do is we're going to make Python wait a couple seconds. So there's a function called sleep. Now I need to actually import that function. So while I'm at it, there's 2 time functions that we're going to need. This one's sleep, and then the second one when we're just sort of doing the status report to see how long this whole thing is going to take when we run it. So from time import time, going to need that later, and then from time import sleep. Okay. So we try reading the data, it doesn't work, so we make Python sleep for 3 seconds. Then we just document that we had a go. And then what we do, so we need to when one of these lists, so one of these stocks doesn't work, when we try and get the data and the stock doesn't work, we want to just make a note of that. So the way to do that is we need to store that information somewhere. So let's create an empty list. Failed attempt is equal to square brackets. Okay. Store the names of stocks that have failed. That's what that line is doing. Okay, so we initialize that. So what we then do is we create an if statement saying if attempt is equivalent to 10, this list over here, we put the name of the stock in that it couldn't pull our data for. Failed attempt dot append ticker. Okay. Exciting times. Let's try to run this. This might fail horribly. I should have put in a print J just so we don't just stare at the screen, but it looks like it's running. Should give us an answer soon. Any moment now. Okay. Let's put in the print J, comma, attempt, and let's not do 10, let's just do 5. Because it seems like it's taking its sweet time. Restart kernel, yes. Okay. Now let's try run this again. Save. It's got to rename this. Not small a, capital A. So run this. One attempt for 1. Okay, so now it's taking its time for number 2. Okay, so as you can see, this thing is finally run. It took a bit of time. and 2, 3, and 4 all failed, unfortunately. It could be just the time of the day. For some reason, it just didn't like to bring back the data. So findf. So we've got AA in and A and AA. And then if I type in failed attempt, that brings back the 3 stocks that it didn't bring back the data. So it's useful to know which ones are failed so that we can try those ones at a later stage. Anyway, so now we've set this up for a couple loops. Now the next thing is, this thing's gonna, when we eventually run it, it's gonna run for hours. So we need to actually save the data to something. So to do that, I'm going to call this saving data to file.